And for decades, you tell everybody it's cool. And then, bam, it's not cool.
Yeah.
And you have just disinvested people. I mean, these things are what? The cheap ones are like $75, something like that. And some of the fancier ones, a couple $100.
Right.
We got 40 million of them sold. So there's people out there that's going to be divested of a lot of money they've spent. Because for 20 years, you've said it's all good. And so the court says you just can't do that.
You can't turn people to felons overnight.
You can't do that.
I'm looking at you over there. What's up with your shoes, by the way?
You're just jealous you're not looking as fly as I am
What?
today, Chris.
Tell me about your shoes, though.
Amanda and I have matching Jordans together, and so these are my matching purple pair of Jordans.
I was wondering what the thought process was like.
Can you hold those up so we can get a better shot on both angles?
I'm rocking purple Jordans today.
That's
We're going to a wedding next month, and this is
with purple Air Jordans?
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
That's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
They go very well. You should borrow his.
I know. I might need to borrow your suit jacket.
Yeah.
Okay. It's got my name on it, but
yeah, I'll give it back.
Okay, cool.
Well, that way he knows who to give it
If
back.
not, I'm sure you could take care of me, legally if I don't give it back to you. So
well, hopefully I don't have to take care of you legally.
Yeah, no, I don't want that.
Okay, go for it.
Welcome to the BTO podcast. I'm Ike. We have Chris, Ian, and our guest today, Ronnie Yates from Ronnie Yates Law.
Yeah.
Gun Trust Pro and a
Yep.
couple other things, I'm sure.
All those good things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Ronnie, thanks for coming up here. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself and your practice and kind of what your area of expertise is.
Sure. So I'm a retired prosecutor. I was a prosecutor for about 17 years in Grimes County. Most people don't really know where that is, but if you drive from anywhere to College Station, you drive through Grimes County. Navasota's there, Renaissance Festival's there. Okay. That's Grimes County. It's a pretty big county, but it's a sparse population. But I was a prosecutor there. I handled everything from JP court stuff up to first-degree felony offenses. You name it, I probably did it. Retired in 2018. Before then, my boss was nice enough to let me do weapons trust and gun trust before I retired from the DA's office, so I started doing that a long time ago. But now I'm out on my own. Started working, doing defense work, which some people call the Lord's work. But I've been doing that for quite a while now. Worked for a firm in Houston for almost 2 years. They specialize in DWI, intoxication offenses, and they brought me on because I didn't specialize in intoxication offenses. So it was basically bring me on to help them with the other aspects and them to teach me the ways of intoxication offenses. It was a great collaboration. Loved working with them. But now pretty much what I do is I'm an 0702 manufacturer. I've been that for a few years. So we do transfers out in Pinehurst. Really don't build anything, but we do a lot of transfers. And I do NFA Trusts, set those things up. I do appeals for people who are denied on 4473s, Form 1s, Form 4s. Any of those things, I do appeals for those, set up UPINs and all that good stuff.
Nice.
And so my primary job is I do criminal defense work. And it doesn't matter what it is. I try to steer away from Class C's, like tickets and stuff. But, friends and family, I'll help out with those. But typically it's Class B and higher.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, assaults, DWI, all the way up to, murders and stuff like that. So I do it all.
For those that aren't in Texas, Texas has a little bit different kind of a misdemeanor setup. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the difference between an A, B, and C is?
Sure. So in Texas, you have 3 classifications of misdemeanors. You have Class C, Class B, and Class A. Class C is a ticket fine only offense. Typically that's a traffic offense, simple assault, things like that. Drug paraphernalia. Class B offenses, you're talking about DWI first, theft charges, low-level possession of marijuana cases, different things like that. And then you get into Class A, which are more serious. It's your second charge of DWI if you have a blood alcohol over 0.15, or if you have assaults, actual bodily injury assaults. So that can include, a bar fight. That can include spousal assault, family violence assault, stuff like that. And so, and theft charges will get you there too. Once you get above Class A misdemeanor, you get into felony levels. You got state jail, third, second, and first degree, and those all, state jail's the lowest, where you can get up to 2 years in the state jail facility. The other ones, all different ranges. So anywhere from 2 to 10, 2 to 20, and up to 99 or life for first degree. And so, but the fines for all the felonies are up to $10,000. So, and all those things have different issues with them, commensurate with what's going on. DWIs will have license suspensions and civil things that go along with those. But that's typically the short breakdown. You have 3 misdemeanors and 4 felony level offenses in Texas.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And since we're on it, how does like a Class B or Class A affect your firearms rights?
So in Texas, really the only thing that will affect your rights, as it were, your ability to possess a firearm, would be a misdemeanor conviction for family violence. And so that would be even a ticket. So if it's a harmful and offensive touch, they write you a ticket. Let's say, you push your brother or your roommate or your spouse, and they don't like that you touch them. That's a family violence offense. If you get a conviction for that, you're a prohibited person for the rest of your life. Wow. But then you can go to Class A, where it's actually bodily injury. So if you slap somebody, they get a bruise. The simple definition for bodily injury is it hurt. That's pretty much what you have to prove, is it hurt. And so that's the basic offense that will make you a prohibited person. It's a family violence offense as far as a misdemeanor goes. Now, as far as other things dealing with license to carry and your ability under 3005 to carry a gun without a license to carry, you start running into other offenses that will prohibit you from applying. And typically, Texas looks at convictions and some defers as a prohibition for you to apply for your license or to get your license renewed, and that's for a period of 5 years. So that you won't be able to get a license to carry. And the things that come into play for getting the license, your eligibility, also is looked at in 3005 for your ability for basically permitless carry, or what people call constitutional carry. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of those same factors. If you can't get a license to carry, then you can't carry without the license.
Gotcha.
So yeah. And so that's the misdemeanor aspect of it. Felony offenses, if you get a felony conviction, you can't get a gun. After 5 years, you can possess one in your home.
Oh.
Under Texas law. Federal law, you're still a prohibited person. And I get people call me all the time, hey, I had this felony from 20 years ago. It was a theft case, blah, 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 blah. I want to go buy a gun. Can't. But legally speaking, if one ends up in your house, Texas will prosecute you. And so a lot of times that'll come into, let's say I marry somebody, and let's say my wife had a felony conviction, 15 years ago for whatever. Well, I can have a gun in my house, and Texas won't prosecute her for having a gun, being in possession of it in the house. Mm-hmm. But under federal law, she's still prohibited from having that gun. Will the feds prosecute you? Probably not. They've got other things to deal with. But if you're hauling people back and forth across the border, you're not supposed to. If you're dealing in weight of drugs, counterfeiting money in the back room, the gun, that's beneficial to them because that ups the ante on cases.
Yeah.
So, but if they're just not going to come in and say, hey, you got this Ruger in the bedroom, you're going to prison. That's not going to happen.
Yeah. So unless you're like getting involved with stuff where federal officers would be there, you're probably pretty. Yeah. In practice, you're probably pretty safe.
Yeah. And typically, unless something big's going on, local agencies aren't going to call the feds because the feds don't care.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that would apply in like self-defense cases too, if like somebody broke into the home and
right.
they were to use the firearm.
Right.
Okay.
And
interesting.
And arguably, it depends on where you are, but arguably, you're not supposed to use a gun in self-defense for deadly force if you're also committing another crime. And so the committing another crime could arguably be a felon in possession of a firearm. But if it's been outside the 5 years, you can own it in your house. So if it's 5 years after parole, after you've served your entire time for prison or served your probation, once that 5 year period is over, you can legally possess a gun in your home. And so, yes, you could use it in self-defense.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm going to lighten things up a little bit. 'Cause we're
Sorry, we
really
just
deep.
went down that rabbit hole.
We went way down that. And my squirrel is telling me to ask what the funniest Renaissance Fair arrest story would be. I'll give you a few seconds to think of it.
I can think of it pretty much right off the top. So when I was a baby prosecutor up until, like I said, I retired in 2018. But for the first 10 years or so, my investigator and one of the chief deputies of the sheriff's department basically ran the security down there. And I would go down there probably once or twice a season, usually Friday night, and I would just stay there till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. So I got into a lot of stuff. Probably the funniest one is there were they have the fire ring down there, which is back in the campgrounds. And you can only be in the campgrounds if you're actually staying there. But the fire ring is pretty crazy. It's gotten a lot less crazy in recent years, but it used to be pretty bad. And there were 3 guys walking down basically the parking road, and they were all underage. You could tell they were underage, and they all had a big old beer in their hand. And so Travis, my investigator, and I, we walk up, and he asks them for their driver's license and stuff, and he gets their driver's license. He looks down, and he goes to give the one back to this guy and to this guy. The other one just takes off running. So he's got his driver's license in his hand, and he just takes off running. Well, later on, we catch him. They almost run my investigator over because we get behind him, and then he goes up to them, and they start driving off. But the fact that he gave him his driver's license, looking at it, the kid just took off and running. It's like, what are you doing? Because now he turned a Class C minor possession of alcohol to a Class A evading. Now he's really created problems. And then he turns it into aggravated assault on a public servant when he tries to run him over. So he goes from probably paying a $200 fine to can go to jail for a really long time.
If that, or if it could have been like, hey boys, y'all need to pour that out. And
pretty much.
call
Pretty
right.
much.
Yeah.
Because the Renaissance Festival pretty much self-regulates itself in the back area. Most of the time, cops don't get involved unless it's something serious. If there's a weapon, something happened, if there's an assault, some type of sexual offense, something like that. Pretty much other than that, it's, we get a lot of assaults out there, get a lot of drug cases out there, but pretty much it's like, just don't be dumb. It's pretty much. But when you're dealing with hundreds of people staying the night out there, and you have a pretty much limited security staff, it's like, just don't be dumb. That's it. Just don't be dumb. But yeah, just hear a cop. I think it's like,
The time to run is before you give him the ID.
that's the time to run.
I
Now
gotta
he's
go.
got all your identifiers and where you live.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
Yeah. That's probably the most lighthearted one. There's been some other stuff out there that I've been involved in, but I probably shouldn't talk about.
Yeah, we're good then.
But yeah.
We're good.
Yeah, for those that don't know, the Houston area has a month-long Renaissance Festival that you
pretty
can
big.
camp at, that you can
It's
party at.
It's a little more than 2 months. It's all of October and November.
Oh, yeah. 2 months.
Yeah. And on good weather days, they can expect 30,000 people in a day.
Yeah.
Holy cow. I didn't realize there was.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah. And so you have people camping out there. There's a lot of vendors out there, but it's a huge area, and they've been doing it since the 60s and 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, you can buy
so as long as I
swords, you can buy
remember-
beer, you can eat a turkey leg.
You have to
Go
eat a turkey
camping.
leg and have to have the cinnamon pecans.
Yeah.
That's what you have to have. Or you can get a bread bowl soup. That's what you have to get.
There we go.
So
We're almost coming up on Renaissance
Yeah,
season.
we will be
Yeah.
sharing this and requesting advertising fees
Yeah.
from what's this dude's? It's the King or whatever.
King
it is.
George?
Yeah, King George. Yeah. So back on firearms. How'd you get into firearms? Just growing up? Just
Man, my mom bought me my first gun when I was about 8. I get a little Browning 22, and I still have it. There's a spring missing from the clip underneath it for the breakdown. I don't know where the spring went. I lost it a long time ago on some black carpet. But it still works, still fires. But that's where I got my love for guns, was growing up. We had 47 acres, and we used to go out there and shoot bowling balls and bowling pins and stumps and stuff like that. Dad had, his Browning 7 mag. We had all kinds of stuff. That's what we just go out there and do. So I had a pond out there, so we used to go out and shoot turtles and snakes and whatever. And that's where I got it from. So I just always liked guns and fishing.
There you go.
So never was a big hunter. My dad didn't hunt, so I didn't grow up around hunting. But we used to shoot all the time. So it was just stuff. Shot stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I got into it.
And then transitioned, we were talking a little bit earlier, you went to Sam Houston State.
So, yeah. So when I did junior college for a while before I really figured out what I wanted to do. And I decided I wanted to be a Texas Ranger, U.S. Marshal. So I went to Sam Houston. While I was there, I did classes for criminal justice law enforcement, and that's my bachelor's there, criminal justice law enforcement. And I interned in Montgomery County DA's office and worked there as an investigator, as an intern. And we worked cold cases and homicides and stuff like that. And then while I was there, I decided, you know what, being a prosecutor is pretty cool. And so then I went to law school in South Texas because I wanted to be a prosecutor. And I did that, like I said, for about 18 years. I started in Walker County, and then I went to work in Grimes County, and I did my entire career there. So, and it's pretty much the same staff for about 14 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it was a family.
Yeah.
Things changed towards the end. My old boss became the new county court at law judge. The first assistant came back as DA. And the dynamics changed a little bit. And when I found out I could get on the contract in Montgomery County, the felony contract out there, and I could have a guaranteed salary, that's when we decided it's time to just go out on my own. And I ran for judge in the Woodlands for JP out there. I was unsuccessful, but in hindsight, I'm glad I got to where I am now. Running for election made a lot of friends involved everywhere. And so whether they're elected or staff or just in the whole process, I made a lot of contacts and a lot of new friends. And so I think I'm where I'm supposed to be. I've always been where I'm supposed to be. God just puts you where you're supposed to be, and that's where I am. And so, Sam Houston to South Texas, and now I'm sitting with you guys.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about something that's near and dear to our heart here is trusts, NFA trusts, and what that looks like for the average individual. Say if I wanted to set up a firearms trust.
I do actually want to, so
Same.
This will be perfect.
So I'm a weird lawyer, where if I like to make money off people, as everyone does, but if you don't need it, I'm not going to do it for you. And so when people ask me, I get a lot of gun shops send me clients, say, hey, I want to get a trust set up. And I always ask them 2 questions. That's it, just 2 questions. Do you want to share it with somebody? Are you married? That's my 2 questions. And if it's yes to either one of those, you should get a trust. And for the simple fact that the only way you can share these items is with a trust. And the reason I asked about the spouse part of it is an individual, let's say you want to go down and you want to buy a silencer. You want to go buy a short-barreled rifle. You want to make a short-barreled rifle. You can do it as an individual, and you will be approved as an individual. But the problem is you can't give it to him to go hunting with unless you're sitting in the stand with him. The way I akin it to people with spouses is let's say my wife and I are driving down the road, and I was approved for, I don't care, machine gun, short-barreled rifle, short-barreled shotgun. I've got it in the car. And I say, hey, drop me off at Academy or wherever, and you go do your thing. And she goes and does her thing, and she gets in a wreck. And they basically take the car and the inventory of the car, and they find this item in there. Silencers really don't count anymore because they're not a prohibited weapon under Texas law. But everything else does. Sawed-off shotgun, short-barreled rifle, those things. And those are all third-degree felonies in Texas. So if she gets caught with it as an individual, she can go to prison for up to 10 years. With a trust, if she's a trustee on it, she's hunky-dory. She's good to go. And so that's the 2 questions I asked. Do you want to share it? Are you married? That's it. If you tell me no to either one of those, you don't need one. Now, if you want to do a trust later and you're approved as an individual, then you get to do a Form 4 for every single item you want to put in that trust and pay the $200 fee for every single item. So if you ever think you want to share it, start off with a trust. So the benefits of a trust over an individual, I've kind of covered that a little bit. Is you get to share it with somebody, and somebody won't get in trouble if they have it. The drawbacks of a trust, arguably, is when you go to apply for a Form 4 or Form 1, the responsible person has to do paperwork. I don't know how many people follow it, but if the trust hasn't changed and there was an approved application within 24 months, then responsible people don't have to do new stuff. They don't have to send in another responsible person form and stuff like that. So it's kind of negated that issue. Okay, if you're like me and you kind of just, I'm happy with what I got and I haven't done it in 2 years, then all the responsible people have to do stuff. More benefits of a trust is that any items that are in there passes outside of probate. So if you do it as an individual and you have a will, it has to go through probate court. With a trust, it doesn't. With a trust, nothing's recorded in Texas. And so some states will require trust to be recorded with the court or a clerk. It's not in Texas. It's completely private. And you can add people and remove people pretty much at will. So if I want to let you use something this weekend, you and I can go down to the bank. I can add you as a trustee. You can do a notary.
Oh, wow.
You can add you as a trustee, and off you go.
Oh, shit. Okay.
And you're good. And you don't have to do any paperwork. You don't have to send in fingerprints or anything like that. We're just adding you as a responsible person on the trust. Period.
Very cool.
Now,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Now, the problem is let's say I add you on there, and I don't put a deadline on it. I just add you on there. And I decide I want to file another Form 1 or do a Form 4, then you have to do the responsible paperwork because the trust has changed now. Mm-hmm. Now, we can take you off, and then I can do the paperwork, but then I can't add you back on until that form gets approved.
Because that trust is still...
Yes,
Yeah.
because it's still in flux with the government. And the government is looking at it as what it is when it's turned in. Mm-hmm. And so if I add somebody in between, then I'm kind of shystering the government because I'm basically perpetuating a fraud on the government because I'm not including all the responsible persons that should have done the paperwork. And so there's a lot of reasons to work with a lawyer in doing gun trusts. I don't fault anybody for trying to save money. I try to do it all the time. But the benefit of using a lawyer who knows what they're doing on these things is you have somebody you can call.
Yeah.
I have people that did trust, 12, 15 years ago, and they still call me. What do I need to do? Well, let me tell you. And I don't charge them anymore. Why? Because it's a quick question over the phone. Why? And so if you deal with, big shops, online shops that are dealer-operated shops, there are instructions on there. If you got questions, call a lawyer. And it just is. And I'm one of those guys that name's on there. There's a guy in Austin, and there's 2 or 3 other lawyers in Texas that are said, these are the guys to use, and I'm one of them. We had Sean Cody. Mm-hmm. If you're in NFA and have been in NFA for any period of time, Sean Cody was kind of the trust guy. He pretty much spearheaded everything.
Absolutely.
And he did my first trust many, many, many years ago, and then I ended up doing my own. But Sean and I were pretty tight. He used to call me all the time about criminal stuff. Usually once or twice a week, he'd call me from the Harris County Courthouse. Hey, I got this issue. What do you think? And then we'd shoot the breeze. He was a pretty big loss to the community.
Oh, yeah. That was
a huge loss.
Devastating.
And he was just as outward and as friendly and as helpful as you could ever get out of a person. But he's the one who got me into doing trusts a long time ago. And he and I talked all the time about gun stuff. He and I differed on opinions on what you can and can't do with trusts. And he liked to push the envelope. And sometimes I would fix the envelope afterwards. But, yeah, trusts are a huge benefit on possessing these things. Because you can get a whole bunch of items in there. You can pass them to, a relative. You can specify in the trust who things go to, because when someone dies, let's say I have a M16 and I have it as an individual or in a trust, either one, but if it passes without a will, you don't know who it's going to. In a trust, you can have it passed to another trustee or a beneficiary, and you can even designate, I want John to get this M16. The benefit of that is when you die, the items will pass on. You can pass them along on a Form 5, and so no one pays the tax fee on that. Well, the problem is, after doing this for so long, if you don't have somebody designated as the heir, they're going to pay the tax fee. Because the feds are like, we don't care. They're not designated as an heir. So they're paying the $200. And I've tried to get around this before. Doesn't work.
Uncle Sam wants that money.
They want that money. They want that money.
So is there anything, because my brother-in-law lives in Idaho, and we've been talking about getting like a family trust for my wife and I, and then him and his wife. Is there anything you got to do differently for out-of-state stuff?
I couldn't begin to tell you anything about state law
Okay.
in other states. I'm licensed in Texas. So you would have to deal with whatever trust and probate law they have there.
Okay.
Typically, what I tell people when it comes to trust is I will get family members that want to go in on a trust together. I'll get friends, coworkers, and stuff that want to go in on a trust together. And what I tell people is it's not like, hey, we're buddy and we get to share this thing. It's all cool. Whenever something's put into a trust, the trustee has absolute control over it. The trust owns the item. So if I have a trust and I add you as a co-trustee on that, and you say, hey, I want to buy such and such and add it. Well, the way I set up my trust, only one person can approve things coming in or out of that trust. But if I let you add stuff to it, guess who owns all those things? The trust, not you.
Oh, okay.
And if he's the only one that has control over it,
You're screwed. You just made a gift to my trust.
Gotcha.
And so when I had to deal with coworkers and stuff, I'm like, you're not just going to buy one thing. You will never buy a silencer and be done with it.
like I'm done
I
after
promise.
Yeah.
Okay? Because I bought 2 silencers when I first started out a long time ago. And by the end of the year, I had 27 tax stamps. I formed one, everything I could get a handle on. Everything. Shotguns, ARs, you name it. I mean, I formed 2 Glocks. I didn't care. Formed one to everything. And so you won't just do one thing. And so if you have coworkers, I always tell them, I will set it up how you want. But if you guys get in a tiff and y'all get in a fight, whoever has the trust owns everything in it. And you will never see that stuff again. And so I always tell them, just do 2 trusts. Just do 2 trusts. But as far as out-of-state stuff, I couldn't tell you one way or the other.
So do you think, in your opinion, then, that we would be better off getting 2 separate trusts?
In my opinion, I think it would be good for you and your wife to get one, and then them to get one, and
Okay.
then y'all can add each other as co-trustees.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
And
Yeah.
and then for that instance, can the same NFA item be on 2 different trusts?
No.
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 Okay.
It's the same thing like you can't own it and he can't own it.
But they're a
all-
trustee, so they have access to it.
Correct.
Okay.
So you can add people to trust, and they can have possession of the item. But a trust is its own entity. So it's just like I do it as a person. The trust is its own entity, and they can possess it and own it. Now, if I've sold stuff out of my trust to people, and that's doing a Form 4 to them, and I make them do the paperwork, and they do the Form 4, and they pay me the money, and then basically it just sits in my safe until they get approved. Because I don't want to give it to them. Because if they don't get approved, I got money, and now they've got an unapproved item.
Yeah.
And I sold it to them. So I keep the item until they're approved. Same thing you would do here at the shop. If you
Yeah.
sell somebody a short-barreled rifle, you're going to keep
can't
it
take it home quite yet.
until they get approved. Yeah, absolutely. So you can't add somebody to the trust if you're selling it to them, and then they can
They
take it
have
home.
access to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can do that. And so I've done that. I did that with him. I had a little SBR P90, and I sold it to him, and
You just add them as a trustee.
just
and
add him
then-
as a trustee for that specific item. Good to go.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's I need to do that.
I think
So-
we need to do that.
Yeah.
Everyone at the shop got trust today.
Yeah.
It's just
But-
It's gonna be my Christmas
set up a
gift to
table
myself.
for him. We just set him up in the lunchroom and have everybody line up.
Yeah.
Cash in hand. There we go.
Just tell me when. Tell me when. But yeah, trusts are phenomenal. Back before 2016.
What was that 41F?
Yeah, 41F.
Yeah.
Back before 2016, the nice thing about a trust is you can have 87 people as co-trustees, and no one had to do extra paperwork. It's just the trust, and the trustee would do it himself, and no one else had to be in it. Well, they changed that in 41F, and that's part of the thing. The benefit was the 24-month rule, is people don't really have to supply the stuff. but they added any responsible person in the trust has to do all the paperwork.
Fingerprints, photo, questionnaire, all
Right.
that.
And in 2016, 2017, in the early days of that rule, it was a lot bigger hassle. Because, if I've got 3 co-trustees, if it's me, my wife, and somebody else, we all have to do this, we all have to do this, we all have to do that. But now the industry has moved more progressively into using, software to the ability to do electronic fingerprints now, being able to save pictures, and literally the only thing somebody have to do would sign a responsible person form. And like I could take that home to my wife, we could fill it out and she can sign it and just bring it back. So she doesn't have to come down here.
Mm-hmm.
Save that one time to give y'all fingerprints and a picture. Everything else is digital. So you can keep all those things. And so when the rule first came out, it was a pretty big hassle.
I remember the big surge right before that. Everyone was trying to.
Everyone.
Dude, it was. Wild.
I mean, if silencer shop sending truckloads.
They had a whole. I remember seeing the picture, like a truckload of USPS flat rate boxes
Yes.
filled with Form 4
Yeah,
applications.
they maxed out that half-ton truck, man. They had boxes all in the back of it because everyone was freaking out.
Oh yeah.
And here we are, all these years later, it's like, okay, no big deal.
Yeah.
That's wild.
But
Dude, it was the Wild West.
it was crazy.
What year was that? 16?
16.
Yeah.
16.
Did you have your FFL? Yeah.
Yeah, he had it.
Oh yeah, we sold every silencer we could get our hands on. It was.
That's
it was,
nuts.
It was amazing.
And then you couldn't get any for forever because everyone that had inventory.
Yeah,
was like,
sold.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people were selling serial numbers. Basically, the manufacturers were getting with dealers, and dealers were basically selling serial numbers. It's like, we've got this can, it's going to be serial number this. Because they can tell you the model, they can tell you the make, and they can tell you the serial number. They just haven't made it yet.
Snap.
So before it even got to the dealer or whatever, they're already in
Yeah.
West Virginia or wherever the
And
applications go.
that's why there was just basically a desert for silencers, because industry manufacturers are trying to catch up to the stuff they've already sold that they hadn't made yet. So yeah.
Wow.
So it's kind of like an 86 with all the Mac 11s and all that stuff. Well, let's grab everything we have and put a serial number on it.
Yeah.
Because next month we won't be able to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing. It's just there was such a demand created through hysteria.
Yeah.
And it was insane.
I mean, it'd be like if California made mags legal for a week. You wouldn't be able to keep a Magpul mag on the shelf because everyone would just they'd be gone.
You wouldn't be able to keep a Magpul mag on the shelf anywhere in the country because
Yeah.
people would be hitting online sales
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
all over. And they'd be buying cases of them.
Yeah. It wouldn't be one, it'd be cases.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
The dude that buys one mag would be like, dude, you're doing that so wrong.
Pretty much. Yeah. Like I said, you won't just buy one silencer if you get a
Yeah.
trust. If
Yeah,
you get,
and
if
I mean,
you
that's-
get into it, you're
It's funny because
jump
I
into
only
it.
have one can right now, and I need to get more. And my brother-in-law's kind of getting into guns again, and
You only have one can.
I only have one can. Yeah,
What caliber is it?
a 30 cal.
Okay.
But
You have some SPRs though, right?
no.
What?
Yes.
No.
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 You had some. I guess you had some pistols that you're waiting to form one.
Yeah. I need to do all that.
Same.
Yeah. That's,
Which can we talk about that?
yeah, that's kind of a weird scenario, isn't it?
Yeah, it is kind of a weird scenario. So the whole
So
pistol brace
bracelet.
thing.
Yeah.
Fill us in.
So to me, it harkens back to the bump stock day. When,
That was close to 2016 too, wasn't it?
yeah, when the government came out, and said bump stocks are machine guns. Cargill and all that stuff now basically says the court has said it's not a machine gun because the trigger still functions one click. So mechanically, it's not a machine gun. We'll see where that goes. But I'd liken it the same way as the brace, kind of compared to that. And so, arguably speaking, devil's advocate, braces, pretty much everyone put them on there, and everyone said, don't post pictures on Facebook that you're using them that way. And that was kind of the unwritten rule.
Don't write the ATF asking
Yeah.
letters
my
asking.
God.
Hey, is this bad? I use it this way with a picture. No. And so, but the problem is the design of it is still to be used to help somebody who's handicapped. That's still the design of it, and that is the intended design of it, and that is the intent of the manufacturers when they sell them. Okay, and so, you know, different people came out. Maxim came out. You know, firearm owners came out. A couple other places came out, and they sued. NRA tried to jump in on a couple of these, and the government says, no, you can't jump in. I got to do your own thing. But the courts right now are basically saying that you can't do this. You can't just say this entire class of people now, because there's like 40 million of these things were sold.
Insane.
And for decades, you tell everybody it's cool, and then, bam, it's not cool.
Yeah.
And you have just disinvested people. I mean, these things are what? The cheap ones are like $75, something like that. And some of the fancier ones, a couple $100.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
you got
yeah.
40 million of them sold. So there's people out there that's going to be divested of a lot of money they've spent, because for 20 years you've said it's all good. And so the court says you just can't do that.
You can't turn people to felons overnight.
You can't do that.
Especially
And,
when you said it was good to go, and then all of a sudden, actually changed our mind.
Yeah. And so there's certain people now that could have them the way they are and kind of be protected. I would tell them not to, but if you bought one of these braces from Maxim, if you were part of the Gun Owners of America, if you were part of firearm protection, the firearm policy, if you're one of those groups that's in those protected lawsuits, then you're protected. Specifically, Texans are one of them, because state of Texas was involved in it, and it was protected. And so arguably you can still have them on your gun. I would tell people not to, because state agencies can still prosecute you, because they can say, we still want to prosecute you, because it's not an approved item. You haven't done the paperwork for it, and that's what the statute says in Texas. It has to be approved by the ATF. ATF right now is saying it's not. So arguably, there's some gray area there that's really big, where you could get prosecuted in Texas for it and have to fight it, because you'd have to prove that the feds said it's okay, and the feds right now are saying it's not. So, but there's you got Bruin, you've got Rahim, you have all these different cases that have come out that are attacking these gun laws right now, and it's all going to come to head. The Supremes are going to have to hear something sometimes, because those circuit courts are slashing things left and right. I mean, you've got cases where people on protective orders for assault family violence cases, they still have a gun because the feds say you can't affect their Second Amendment right. And the same thing with the bump stocks. You can't just change stuff.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't meet the statute and the definition that you have. If you have a definition, then it's one pull, one fire.
That's semi-automatic.
This isn't changing it.
Yeah.
And it's still semi-auto. And so there's, the Chevron case is the big case that happened a long time ago, but there are a few cases coming up now that are attacking Chevron that are scheduled to be heard next year by the Supreme Court. And there's a lot of people thinking, Thomas and Gorsuch and these guys are going to come back and eviscerate Chevron. Basically says, Chevron says that judges can't come back and micromanage, basically administrations or administrative agencies when they're interpreting a rule, because as long as it meets their intent and meets their code and stuff. But the new laws, the new cases that are coming out, are doing like some fisheries that are required to have cameras by the federal government, and they're making them pay for it. No, if you're requiring it, you pay for it. And so you have different cases that are coming out now that are attacking this, and there's a pretty good chance that some of this stuff's going to change. If the Supreme Court ideology doesn't change, it's going to look good for gun industry, because that's the way all the circuit courts are ruling right now. You've got a few that are ruling against it, but the majority of them are saying it's the Second Amendment right. You can't change stuff, and it's looking at historically speaking, tradition and looking at the historical setup of everything. And so if the law, like one of the more recent ones is theft. Like there was a case, I forget the name of it, where a guy was charged with felony theft. He was convicted of it. And he went to go buy a gun, and the ATF said, the FBI says, no, you're a prohibited person. Well, he went back and fought it, And the federal court basically says, no. You first started making prohibited persons out of theft in the 60s, which is a long way away from the Second Amendment and its intent back then. And so you have to look at the intent of the drafters and what's going on. So it's relatively recent you started doing this. And the court says, no. A theft conviction, a minor felony conviction of theft doesn't make you a prohibited person. So there's a lot of changes happening on a 922 under the prohibited person statute that the courts are saying this ain't right. But in the end, it takes somebody who gets charged and convicted to fight that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when the brace thing happened and the bump stock happened and all these different things. It's like, we're going to fight this. Ooh. You get to be the volunteer to get arrested and charged. I'm not going to be that guinea pig. And that's where we're running into a lot of these things. With the braces and stuff, it had to start somewhere. Industry started it with an injunction. And that's kind of where we are right now. It's kind of held until next year, till something happens. We're kind of in a standstill.
My big question is, like we talked about it with Mike from Sons of Liberty, was when, especially during the height of COVID, everyone was buying everything off the shelf, and people necessarily didn't know what they were buying. So if somebody bought a pistol with a brace on it and now has it, and they're not tracking everything that's going on, and they use it in like somebody kicks down the front door and is there to rob and pillage them, and they shoot somebody with that, what is happening to them, do you think?
They're going to get charged.
If you can,
I would say it would depend on where you are, and it depends on the jurisdiction where you are on how they enforce that law.
Okay.
Under Texas, it's still a prohibited weapon. It's still defined in the penal code as a prohibited weapon. It's a third-degree felony to possess it.
Interesting.
If it's not approved by the feds.
Yeah.
Because it's a short-barreled rifle. And so there's those kind of jump-throughs, because right now the case law right now says that in Texas the injunction basically says that you can have it, and it's not a prohibited weapon. And so it's going to be a legal battle there. You get charged with this item under Texas law, you're going to have to, once you get convicted of it, then there's going to be appeals process and stuff. And so Texas law still says it's a prohibited weapon because the federal government says it's still a prohibited weapon unless it's approved. And that's the way the penal code reads. Basically, they have to prove it's a prohibited weapon, so they're going to have to prove it. And so there's going to be some legal shenanigans that goes on in the back. And the legal answer to your question is, it depends.
Yeah.
Ultimately, all this stuff, it depends.
That's spooky.
Yeah, it's like, drug charges. You go from Montgomery County to Grimes County to Walker County on different drug charges. Let's say weed, and you go to Harris County.
Completely different.
It's completely different.
Yeah.
So it all depends on where you are. And so I had a client in Harris County. He got charged with, he had 8 cans on him, but he had all kinds of guns, sawed-off shotguns, rifles, probably 400,000 rounds of ammunition,
Sounds
pistols.
like a party.
Well, he was living out of his truck, and he had a whole lot of stuff. Super great dude. Loved him to death. But HPD pulled him over for squealing out of a parking lot. He pulls up, when you have these trusts, if you're carrying around this stuff, you should keep copies of the trust with you and the approved tax stamps. Legally speaking, they're tax forms, and local agencies can't demand to see your federal tax forms. Only the feds can. But if you don't want to go to jail, may as well show them.
Yeah.
Most of them don't know what they're looking at. They just know it's sawed-off shotgun, and you're supposed to have some paper.
If you show them something, they'll probably be like, "Oh yeah, well, it looks good."
Here you go. Well, the problem is I keep an envelope in my glove box in every car I drive that has a copy of my trust and a copy of every stamp I have, because I don't know what I'm going to have in my car. Any car I drive, I don't know. And if my wife's in there, I posted a picture the other day. My daughter's been driving my old car to school, and you don't know what you leave in your car. So I was riding in the passenger seat about a week ago and opened up the glove box. I had like 3 or 4 loaded magazines in there. I'm like, oh, you can't have these at school.
Yeah.
You're like, shit.
They're like 2 30-round Glock magazines and stuff. I'm like, oh, let me get those out of here.
Fun sticks.
Because you don't know.
Yeah.
And so I tell people to keep copies of these trusts. Well, he had them on his phone in a PDF form. Well, his phone screen's all cracked to hell. Can't see anything. So they arrest him, charge him, seize everything. everything. And so I went down to the DA's office. I'm like, hey, here's a copy of his trust. We don't care. Oh, okay. And so I ended up going to court, and the judge's like, what's going on with this case? I go, I don't know. Ask them. They haven't filed it yet, and they're not going to file it. The chief prosecutor's, well, Ron, that's a pretty bold statement. I go, what's even bolder is that when you do indict it, I'm going to get it dismissed within a week. Why? Because you can't file it. You can't prove it. And so I ended up having to do basically a treatise for the DA's office down there with, tax law, 922 law, probate law for Texas, and all this stuff, breaking down the code and everything. I go, here. About a day later, he goes, can we pass this around the office because most of us don't know this stuff? I go, yes.
Please.
Yes. And then it took me about 2 months to get all the stuff back because I had to organize with Major Offenders Task Force and this guy and some HPD officer had all these symbols, Dragon Task Force and Federal Liaison and all this stuff for him to go get all his stuff back. And it was a lot of stuff. But it all cracked down to because he didn't have a copy of his trust that he could show the cops. That's what it came down to.
And in Harris County.
And it's Harris County.
Yeah.
So you get in some of these smaller counties, but the big deal now is silencers, because in the last legislative session, well, not this most recent one, but 2 years ago, they took silencers completely off the penal code. It is not anywhere in Texas law, silencer. And so under Texas law, you can have 50 cans out there that you don't have a single tax form for, and Texas can't do anything to you. Not a thing.
Interesting.
But
federal law, but federally, it's still against the law. And so here's some little fun stuff in that. And so I did a CLE on this a couple years ago, and all that changed. And so there were different laws enacted dealing with silencers. And so Texas completely took prohibited weapon out of the silencer out of the prohibited weapon section, like they did switchblades a while back. It's just not there anymore.
It's like brass knuckles too.
Yeah.
Isn't that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not there anymore. And so that's cool and all, but it's still against the law federally. Now, what the state has done is the state law basically says, hey, if it's in Texas and it's made by Texas parts, you're all good. And they go further saying if the feds prosecute you, we will provide a defense to you. That's all Texas code. That's there.
Wow.
I don't know why Texas did this, though, because I can't remember what state it was in. It's either Illinois, Indiana, somewhere up north. There was some guys making short-barreled rifles, and the feds came in and hit them and said, well, you're breaking federal law because you're making these and you're not getting the right paperwork for them.
Was that Randy Weaver?
So, well, they ended up prosecuting them. Texas joined in, did an amicus brief. A couple other states joined in, did an amicus brief because these guys were convicted. And then they went up to a court of appeal, and their courts of appeal in that state goes, no, this is perfectly fine. And then the Supreme Court says, we're not going to mess with it. So the convictions were upheld because they were making stuff, and that state's law said that you can make short-barreled rifles out of parts from this state, and you won't be prosecuted, which is the same thing we did here with silencers. And Texas was part of that lawsuit. So I don't know why they did it here.
Yeah.
To go even further, a state agency here, or what they consider a political entity, so that's, City of Houston, Harris County Sheriff's Department, some constables, a political entity, they can't have a policy because now they can't arrest people for these silencers. They can't have a policy where if I find somebody and they have a bunch of silencers and there's no stamps, there's no serial numbers, there's no nothing because they made them in their garage, I can't call the feds. Because if you have a policy that says, hey, if there's this, and you call the feds to help with that, the code basically says that the state of Texas can withdraw providing you any funds from tax. So imagine if Harris County had a policy that says, hey, we catch the guy with a bunch of cans, we call the feds. They lose all tax money from the state of Texas. So imagine what the roads would look like in Harris County.
Huh. Like they do now.
Probably worse, more like Louisiana. But it's crazy. But they did all that real quick and threw everything together because there's law that's written that comes afterwards. It's written differently, and the newer law actually controls more than the older law.
Yeah,
because it was passed
I think you were
later.
telling me about that just the other day.
Yeah. And so the legislative sessions are just, I mean, people call it the sausage factory because there's a lot of people in there making Texas law aren't lawyers. They don't know what it says, and they're knee-jerk reacting to stuff. And then they have basically policy writers writing this stuff, and they don't know how it affects real-life scenarios. They just don't. And so, and this is like I think I was telling you about evading in a vehicle. When that was changed, they passed 2 laws. One makes it a state jail felony. One made it a third degree felony. Well, the third degree felony controls because it was signed into law after the first one, but they're both still on the books. You look at the penal code under evading; they're both still in the books, but the later one controls. And so, God love them. I know a lot of legislators, but some of them should not be drafting law regarding certain things they don't know anything about. Because I've gotten in arguments with them, about, AK-47s are legal. No, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. And we went back and forth till finally pretty much elected officials were walking away from the guy I was arguing with like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And he's going to get in office to make law. So.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
Funny how that works.
And to clarify for those listeners, because when the suppressor and silencer legislation came to pass in Texas, we had quite a few emails requesting us to sell them silencers without having to require paperwork. We are not going to do that because Ike, as you can see, is too pretty.
Too pretty for prison.
Yeah.
And we also enjoy a steady paycheck.
Doing what you love.
Doing what we love to do.
The problem with the silencer thing is like our license is from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
So while we may not get in trouble with Texas, the feds they're not going to be happy about
because
that.
they do show up here.
They do, yes.
And they do say, hey, we want to see all of your records. And we have to say, here.
Yeah. And they will tie you up for a week. And so that's when.
Oh, yeah, you've probably been through audits.
Yeah, we went through an audit. And we don't have a lot of stuff, but it was butt puckering. So when the change with silencers and the same thing with bunk stops, I was getting calls from individuals. I was getting calls from manufacturers and dealers and all this stuff. It's like, what do we do?
Yeah.
I'm like, don't. Just don't do anything right now. Act like nothing's changing. Just act like nothing's changing. Keep doing business like you're supposed to be doing business, because it will come back and bite you.
Oh yeah,
it just will. And it's just And when you have a business as big as you have, auditors can take forever.
they drag it out.
If you are a consumer of these items, you don't know the headache that's in the background of these things, because the feds are getting tighter and tighter and tighter and getting more scrutinizing of everything.
Mm-hmm.
They had issues with us because I had done some 4473s and I didn't check a box the right way, and they had issues.
Oh yeah,
because I didn't do it on like 4 of them. It's like, I don't know. And yeah, they had issues. This is in your file. If you do it again, it's like, we do like 9 transfers a year. We sell like gun parts and stuff.
Yeah.
Somebody wants, hey, I want a new upper. Okay, just have it sent to here. We don't care. But literally, I couldn't imagine somebody doing, let's say, 900 transfers. The issues that could pop up when somebody doesn't know to check this box, and it's compounded.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, over there we actually have 4 different sets of eyes that look at every form. So like the guy that fills it out, or the sales associate, the floor manager, Andrew, the GM, and then Sissy, the ATF compliance lady.
Yeah.
Before she files it away, she's the last one to look at it, and we're doing really good. We catch them usually on the floor, like while the customer's standing there. But just as extra layers of protection, we've got 4 sets of eyes.
And training.
Oh yeah.
Just repetitive training and repetitive doing things. Just that muscle memory where your brain just knows, this is what I'm supposed to do. Because if your brain doesn't know for that one stupid box, every single time, you're not going to check that one stupid box. And I did that. It's like, well, now I check the box. So, but yeah, it's just, the scrutiny of the federal government now dealing with FFLs is off the chart.
Yeah, they're revoking tons of licenses just left and right.
Right. And how, if you can't stop somebody from legally buying a gun, how do you stop them from legally buying a gun?
You stop the guy that's selling it.
Take away the supply.
Yep.
If they can't go somewhere and buy it, you don't have to say they can't buy a gun because you've prevented them from being able to do it, period. And that's kind of the conspiracy theorists' talk right now.
Oh, yeah.
Is they're getting rid of the ability for somebody to sell you a gun because they can't get rid of your ability to buy one. So they can regulate the hell out of somebody for safety. And so it's just crazy how it's the parameter, the paradigm shift that agencies will go through when they can't get what they want. They'll find a different way to get there.
Yeah.
And that's just that's what's going on right now.
And just look at for instance, is it Washington or Oregon, whoever had the most recent ban, the state legislature basically says to sell a magazine, I believe it is, you have to have a background check ran by the FBI, or maybe it is no, even to sell a firearm, they're requiring an FBI background check, and FBI's like, we're not going to do a background check.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, the state police have to regulate that and do it, and state police like, we're not doing it.
We don't have
so
to
now, basically, like, you can't buy a gun because nobody in that process is going to do what the state legislature is requiring of the seller and the state police.
So it's like I said, the legislature doesn't know the impact on the general structure of what's going on in real life. And why talk to your law enforcement? Why talk to the ATF guy in the area? Why talk to them? Because this is what we know. We know this needs to happen. And then it happens, and like you said, the government's like, we don't have time for this crap. We've got other stuff. Why? Kind of like the felon with the gun in the house. I don't care. If he's doing other things, cool. But we've got more important stuff to deal with. And that's what's going on. And the same thing with local law enforcement. We've got crime to deal with. And that was, going back to trusts, that was a big change in 41F, is now you don't have to get law enforcement permission.
Yeah.
Now you just got to send them a copy.
Now it's notification.
Here, this is what I'm doing. Yeah. And that was a big change because there were different areas where if you were trying to do it as an individual, you couldn't get approved.
Yeah.
Because a law enforcement officer in that area wouldn't approve it.
Yeah.
Harris County had issues.
Oh, yeah.
Because the DA office wouldn't sign off of it and the sheriff wouldn't sign off of it. It's like, no, we don't want more of those death things here. And you'd have to find somebody else that would meet,
That chief law enforcement officer requirement.
Yes. Yeah. And so you don't have that anymore with the trusts or with individuals even. So
yeah, it's a notification. No longer, you're not asking for permission. You're telling them what you're doing.
Right. Yeah. And
I
have
so many questions. It's like, it's so confusing. They make it so hard for the normal person just to.
Oh, the best thing are those when you see them on social media and they have like these. You have the ATF guy at the podium talking about the different guns. Okay, so if you do this, it's a short barrel rifle. Nope, it's a pistol. But if you do this, it's a pistol. No, that's a short barrel rifle.
Yeah.
But if you do this, that's a rifle. If you do this, well, that's just a firearm. It doesn't count. And that whole thing.
It's an other.
If you're not in this, like you're talking about people going buying, basically braced weapons off the shelf from dealers.
Yeah.
There's
hundreds of thousands.
I just want a gun. This is what you got. Let me have it. They don't know.
They don't know what a brace is.
They don't know any of this stuff going on out there. None of it. They're oblivious to it.
I can remember somebody buying, like they either messaged me about it on Facebook or somebody had commented on Facebook about it, and it was during the height of COVID, and like they sold like one of the I-45 gun shops, right? Like sold a married couple who had no firearms, It was like a pistol version, like a 8.5 or maybe a 9-inch 300 blackout. Sold them the wrong ammo, right? Because they didn't have any 300 blackout on the shelf.
Yeah.
It's standard mags, and like, here you go. Here's your rifle, and they didn't have any clue of what they had or why they had it. And you're like, you probably won't be able to take it back, but that is not what you
Where we used to work, dude, I can't tell you how many braced firearms were sold during the height of COVID.
Oh, yeah.
When people who have never owned a firearm before came in and were looking for guns, and that's all anyone had.
Mm-hmm.
And how many people bought those firearms not knowing what's happening today, that probably are even following what's going on.
They have no idea.
No idea.
I mean, there's, I'm really at a loss of words. It's pretty crazy on all of it.
And what I do for a living, I get to talk with a lot of different folks and a lot of different, backgrounds, and both sides of the line, the Democrats, Republicans, and I'm talking extreme on both sides of them. And generally speaking, I'm kind of malleable. I can be friends with almost everybody. And generally speaking, it depends on who I'm talking with, but they'll always come back to, why does someone need this? Why does someone need that? Why do you need this many rounds? And I always take it to the extreme because that just gets the point across. Why do I need a 30-round magazine on this weapon of war? I'm like, well, let me ask you a question. What if you had a machine gun? Would that be okay? Well, no, that's even worse. Well, let's talk about how many legal machine guns, have killed people since 1934. Well, it's got to be a lot. No. It's like 2. It's like 2. 2 or 3 machine guns have been used, and a couple of them were used by cops that had them when they weren't supposed to. From 1934. There are like 70,000. I forget all the numbers. I used to keep them on my phone of how many silencers are in Texas, how many machine guns are in Texas. And you tell me the last time you saw a legal machine gun used in a crime or a legal silencer.
Yeah, I was going to say, when was the last time you heard of a suppressor being used?
Floated out there. It doesn't happen. Why? Because people who legally buy guns typically don't commit the crime.
Correct.
It's just that simple. And so, and this is I mean, I even have numbers I brought with me as far as how many items have been approved since going back when it started up through the last few years, and how many different silencers and NFA items, tens of millions. How many have been used? Typically, people who follow the law and buy guns legally don't commit the crime. And so that's why I always go to machine guns. There's millions of them out there. They don't get used. And so when you talk about people buying stuff they don't know what they're dealing with, typically crimes are committed by people who don't follow the law. Granted, you'll run into some people that are on the outskirts that have used something in self-defense, and that counts as a statistic dealing with murder, because one of the guys asked about defending property and stuff on your post.
Oh, yeah.
And as far as self-defense goes, in Texas, if you're going to claim self-defense or defense of another or defense of property, if you get charged with it, you have to admit you committed murder. You have to say, I killed him, and I meant to do it. But I had a reason why. If you don't say I did it on purpose,
So like justifiable homicide?
That's it.
Yeah.
It's not Section 9 in the penal codes, just justified defenses. And you have defense of persons, defense of yourself, deadly use of force to defend people and property. And so, but you have to say you did it on purpose. Oh, I meant to beat him up. Oh, I meant to shoot him. I meant to kill him. But then you use the defense. So like, someone, you have mutual combat. Like, you and I, let's go around back. Let's you and I go around back and settle this, and then you and I agree to fisticuffs. That's mutual combat. You can't all of a sudden say, I don't want to do it anymore, and then I continue doing it. That's different, because now I'm assaulting you. Because you say, I'm done. Or if you're winning the fight and I pull out a knife, I've just escalated it. Okay, and so now there's use of deadly force I'm using against you. Now you can defend yourself with whatever weapon you may have, and so it's just a level of escalation. And so I don't know how much longer we have, but I could talk about some of that too, as far as the defenses go. So he had specifically asked about, I guess, somebody coming to your house. Hey, I think he talked about an increase of people shooting. Coming on your porch or something like that.
Let me see here. There's Eric Luley. He said, discuss Texas law on shooting alleged trespassers. Reason I asked this as we have seen an uptick in shootings related where people go to the wrong house or pull in the wrong driveway.
So there's really no short answer to that question. There are complete sections in law books that are taught over periods of weeks to lawyers or people going to law school dealing with justification of defenses. And the statute's pretty straightforward, but there's a lot of case law behind driving these things. And I'm going to preface the entire answer with what I said earlier. The legal answer is it depends. It all depends, and there's no duty to retreat in Texas anymore. You don't have to retreat. And so you can defend yourself, you can defend your property, you can defend your neighbor's property. And so typically the way defense works is, an assault or a criminal trespass or something. Don't come on my property, get off my property, things like that. I can use force to make you leave. Okay, get off my property. Just like if you're at the mall and you're acting an ass and the security says you need to leave, I'm not going to leave. They can put hands on you and make you leave. Typically they'll just put hands on you, call the cops. The cops come arrest you for criminal trespass, but they can forcibly make you leave. Okay. Now, if I'm at the mall and I'm acting an ass and they tell me to leave and I pull out a gun, well, I've just escalated it. And so there are certain crimes in Texas that you've got burglary, you've got trespass of a building, different things like that, where you can use force to get people out. Okay. If someone comes in, they're trying to forcibly remove me from my house, I can use force. And so there's a level in the code that says if this, then that. And what I tell people dealing with the criminal law for so long, the criminal law doesn't tell you what you can do. It tells you what you can't do. And as long as you're not doing what you can't do, then you won't get in trouble. Okay? And so if you have these parameters dealing with defenses where it deals with, robbery or burglary or anything like that, or just coming on your property, you can use reasonable force to make the threat stop. Where you start getting into deadly force is if you are in fear of your life. If you as the actor thinks that there's deadly force being used against you or there's a threat on your life, okay? So let's say someone's on your porch and you think they're going to break in your house and rape you or rob you, something like that, and you are in fear of your life. Let's say they have a machete in their hand or something. You can use deadly force. I would find it hard-pressed as a defense lawyer if I got hired on a case. I mean, I'd fight like the Dickens, and I'd make the argument all day long. But if someone's just standing on my porch, banging on my door, and I can see them through the window, I don't know if I'm going to shoot them. I just call the cops if I was the person at the house. Because, I mean, they ain't in the house. I don't really care. If they get in my house, it's a different story.
Yeah, they give your front door the boot, then it's game on.
Especially if it's nighttime. Nighttime in Texas opens up a whole different gamut. Ooh. So criminal mischief, theft at nighttime, that's a whole different thing in Texas. Texas take their, you steal my back out of my front yard, you can shoot somebody for that. Should you? Probably not. Okay, but theft at nighttime, criminal mischief at nighttime, burglary of habitat, all that stuff, nighttime changes the whole gamut. And so it's we don't have enough time to really discuss all the intricacies of self-defense and justification defenses. I mean, I've got friends of mine that have written books on this stuff, and they'll come talk to us at our different bar meetings and stuff, and we've had them come back 3, 4, 5 times, and we're through one section, and this is a lawyer who's coming talking to other lawyers, and we'll get through like 9.31 in an hour, and we still have questions. It's like, because there's so much case law driven in all these things. But ultimately, I mean, if they're wielding a weapon on your porch, you know, and you're in fear of your life, you know, it's taking that next step from just regular offense to deadly force. There has to be some type of imminent threat. And that's what it says in the statute. There's an imminent threat of something bad happening that could cause death to you or somebody else. Same thing if your neighbor's next door and somebody's going at them with a knife. Well, if you can defend them because force is being used against them, and then that other force is actually deadly force, you can protect them too. Same thing with, you know, breaking into your neighbor's house is getting broken into. I mean, you can protect their house if somebody's breaking into it. Same way you can protect your own house. And so, but you always have to live with the fact that any of the defenses you use, you're going to have to admit that you committed the offense. And that's a hard part for some people to get up and say, I killed somebody and I meant to do it, before you ever get to that. And murder has the same. I mean, if you're waving a gun around at somebody, and saying if you are carrying a handgun, and someone's threatening you, and you pull that handgun, you better be ready to defend yourself from the government, because you have to say why you pulled that gun. It's the same thing as if you shot him. You pulled that gun. It's the same thing. So yeah,
I guess it's deadly force and threat of deadly force.
it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Aggravated assault with a deadly weapon is I'm beating the hell out of you. I either cause serious bodily injury, or I use a deadly weapon, or I threaten you. If I say I'm going to kill you and I point the gun at you, that's aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. So it's the same thing. If I go, you really want to play, and you slide out and show your gun, it's the same thing. You're exhibiting a deadly weapon while you're threatening somebody. And so that's where training comes into this. Basically knowing your surroundings, paying attention to what's going on, and being able to see things happening, so you don't have to, you can get away from the threat, right? So there's no sense going to the threat if you can avoid it. It just makes sense. Some people like the threats, and some people like to get involved. That's cool, but be ready for the consequences, because in the end, the government will prosecute you more than likely if somebody's dead, unless it's absolutely obvious that you were in the right. Okay? So if there's 17 witnesses that say this guy pulled a gun on me and then I shot him, that's a little bit different. But if it's dead guy and you, and it's your word, there's going to be a lot more involved in the investigation. You know, especially if he doesn't have a weapon. So it's just.
I wonder how the whole Taqueria shooting played out, if they ever got that guy in Harris County or not.
I think they found out who it was, and I think they were trying to prosecute him, but I don't think it really went anywhere, because he was defending other people. The problem was that I think he was a felon. He wasn't supposed to have a gun, if I recall correctly. And so he really wasn't supposed to have a gun. That's why he left.
Yeah, that's why.
But in the end, I mean, is a jury going to convict him? And so that's when you have to look at, you know, as a prosecutor, you have to look at a case. It's like Texas prosecutors are sworn to seek justice and to make sure justice is done. And so that's looking at a case and going, justice was done. And you know, and that's,
Yeah, it was.
I mean, you got a guy in there threatening a whole bunch of people, you know, and this guy stopped the threat for a whole bunch of people who could have turned out really, really badly.
Oh yeah.
And especially in Harris County, I don't see a jury getting up there and saying, "Hey, this guy needs to be prosecuted."
Yeah, he just saved a dozen people. Fuck this guy.
And you're not going to get 12 people to agree this guy should be prosecuted.
Oh yeah.
For killing this dude that was threatening to kill other people.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. You know, and you may want to prosecute it. It looks good in the headlines, but no. And it's just, you know, and that was a good thing for me being a prosecutor, is coming up through that to be able to look at so many different cases and how facts apply, you know. And I use that now as a defense attorney, because I look at cases and I'm like, it's really not that bad. And then you try to push that direction. And that's all it comes down to is, I look at cases the same way I did as a prosecutor. I look at the strengths and weaknesses of the cases, and I look at it as, why this case should go a certain way. And as a defense attorney, my job is to zealously represent my client. And so I'm going to look at every single little issue that's wrong with this case and pick it apart. Because ultimately my job is to make the state prove the case. Because everyone is innocent unless they're proven guilty. Not until. Until presumes they're guilty. They just haven't got there yet. And so that's when I see a lot of the law enforcement Facebook posts. At the bottom, JoJo was arrested. They got a picture of him in the back of the car, all tattered and whatever. And at the bottom says, innocent until proven guilty. That's not what the penal code says, and that's not what the federal code says. It's unless. Because that statement presumes guilt. And that's
it's like they're guilty. We just haven't proven it.
We haven't got there yet.
Yeah, we're getting to that.
No, that's not how it works. And so the state has to prove their case to a jury. And my job is to make the state do that. And they have to follow the law. Their agencies have to follow the law. If it's a bad search, if it's a bad stop, if it's a bad arrest, if it's a bad test, if it's a bad this, if it's a bad that, my job is to point that out. So a jury can look at the evidence and decide which way this should go. And I love being a prosecutor because you got all this power. Because literally you have investigators working for you, you've got cops working for you, you've got all this stuff. And, it's the self-defense attorney says it's the unbridled power, the unlimited funds of the government. I don't say that, but I know a lot of defense attorneys did it when we tried cases. The states over here, they got all these prosecutors, they got all these witnesses in here, they got crime victim coordinators, they've got investigators, they got all these people. It's me and my client. So how do you win that? Well, easy. They got to prove the case. They got to prove it. And so that's when it comes down to defenses, that's what happens is the state's going to say you did it. And you got to admit you did it. And then it's your job to prove why you did it was reasonable and why you felt threatened so much so that you had to use deadly force. And so it takes that cool reflection, and that's where it comes into training, situational awareness, and knowing what you can and can't do before that situation ever happens. Because if you don't prepare for that situation, you have no idea how you're going to react. And generally speaking, most people don't know how they're going to react anyways. I don't care how much you train until you're in that situation. You don't know. I mean, I've been shot at before and it scared the piss out of me, okay? A couple times. But you don't know. My reaction was, I'm gone. I don't want to get in a gun battle with anybody. I'm gone. If he didn't hit me the first time, good. I'm a grapevine walk. I'm gonna get out of here, side to side, how they do it in the movies. I'm gone. I don't want to get in a gunfight. I shoot a lot. I train a lot. But I don't want to get a gunfight with anybody because that's pretty final. Yeah. For one of us, it's pretty final. Oh, yeah.
Playing for keeps, sir.
I like going to see movies, and I like going to driving range with the kids. Coloring. I like that stuff, and you can't do that if you're dead or in prison. I mean, I guess you can color in prison, but you won't do it with your kids. Yeah. And so it's the law is it's long, it's pretty straightforward. Case law messes it up quite a bit, but it's just when it comes to criminal law, the law says what you can't do. And as long as you're not doing that, you're good to go. So it depends.
There you go. It depends.
It depends.
It depends.
And so and someone else asked about, I guess the insurance things that people do. I guess the Concealed Carry of America. Or all those types of things. So generally, I've been asked by a couple of those to come on as an attorney for them, and I've turned them down because if someone comes and hires me on a case, they're hiring me because I know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. I'm local to wherever it is because I practice anywhere from Walker County to Galveston and from Cold Spring to Grimes County. And so it's that 105-45 corridor because I've practiced in all those courts and I know so many people and I love doing it. But it's somebody who's local and knows what they're doing. when you hire onto one of those places, you don't know who you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know. You don't know if they're used to dealing with that type of law, that type of offense. You just don't know. And as everyone knows, dealing with insurance, there are caveats everywhere. And so, typically speaking, there are ways out for these. I mean, basically, a lot of these say you have to be found guilty before they start repaying you back. A lot of them say that. And so, because, you get the lawyer, you work, and if you're found not guilty, cool. But a lot of them won't come and pay that back. And so, but there's caveats throughout all of these. It's a contract, and it's an insurance contract, just like I was telling you about my flooded office. Mm-hmm. You have to know the ins and outs of that agreement. And a lot of these insurance things basically prey on two groups of people. People who are taking a license to carry class because the spokesman will come talk, hey, let me tell you about this. It's a great thing. If you get out there and you get involved in the shooting, we're there to protect you. Just pay us the monthly fee. Or law enforcement, because they go to some of their continuing education, and they'll tell them the same thing. Hey, if you're involved in a shooting, if you're off duty, your department won't cover you, but we'll be there for you. And it's like, sign me up. And so, it's that fear of the unknown that, yeah, this would be good for me, but most lawyers I know, they tell people to steer away from those things because it'd be better to hire somebody that is known in the area, is local to the area, and actually knows what they're doing. I'm not going to disparage the lawyers that work for these places because there's some good ones that work for them, but you may not get them. The same thing with, different areas of court-appointed lawyers and stuff. There's some good ones. There's some really good ones that I would probably hire if I got in trouble. But then there are some that, aren't. Same thing with dentists, doctors, anything like that. Gun builders. There are good gun builders and there are bad gun builders. There are ones that I would definitely risk my life buying a gun from them that they've made, and there are other ones I wouldn't. And I wouldn't even buy the gun and take it apart and put it back together. I would just not use it. And it's the same thing. And it's knowing what you're dealing with. It's a known. And so if you get charged with an offense, you're going to reach out to friends, family, other lawyers cops anybody, say, hey, who do I call? And then all those people are going to tell you who to call.
This guy.
That's the one you need to call. And so it's just knowing the right people to steer you in the right direction.
Yeah.
I'm going to need your business card.
That's a pretty good spot there. If people want to hire you, need to talk to you, where can people find out information?
You can Google Ronnie Yates. If they spell my name right, Yeates, I'm pretty much all over the internet because I used to shoot a lot of photography stuff for different magazines and stuff, and then my Gun Trust Pro thing. Just 832-LAW-1000 is my phone number. So it's 832-529-1000. They can reach out to me at ronnieyates.com or just ronnieyates.com.
Nice.
Fantastic.
So I'm on the Facebook, and I'm on a couple other things.
And you're in our group? You're in our Facebook group?
Yep.
Yep.
So if anybody's got any questions after this for Ronnie, drop them in drop them in that comment, or we'll do another thread.
Yeah.
Actually,
on the
when
Facebook. When this drops, we'll probably post.
Yeah, we'll post a thread when this drops, so we'll get some follow-up questions if people have that. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Yes,
We really appreciate you coming by today.
Absolutely.
And hanging out with us for a while and talking about the topics that you did. Appreciate it. And if you stayed tuned to this whole entire podcast, we appreciate it. Drop a comment on Facebook or drop a comment on YouTube. Even more important, get some engagement there. Like, hit the bell, do all the good stuff. Leave us a rating on your now USB-C chargeable iPhone device because they finally have come up to Samsung level.
Listen, iPhone's master race. So
Okay, whatever.
Shut up, Chris.
Anyway, I can charge with the USB-C, buddy. Anyway, thanks for watching. Roll it out.
Stay strapped so you don't get clapped, and be safe. Go forth and conquer.
BigTextOrdnance.com.
Carpe diem.
Cease the carp.
All day long.